Welcome back, jury. Ms. Ivy.
Thank you, Your Honor. Please will call Steve Willison to the stand, please.
If you raise your right hand, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please have a seat, and once you're settled in, I'll move that microphone close to your mouth and tell us your full name and spell the last, please.
Stephen Willison, Willison.
Thank you, Ms. Ivy.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Willison, what was your occupation in, actually, let me just start there. What is your current occupation?
I'm an attorney
And how long have you been an attorney?
since 1990.
And in 2007, were you working as an attorney?
I was.
And in what capacity?
I had my own law firm that did primarily work for insurance companies on property coverage matters.
And so when you say you did work for an insurance company, what was your primary role then with that company?
So we would help insurance companies determine their legal rights under the policy of insurance and determining whether or not a loss was covered typically, which most of my cases involved whether there was an intentional loss, which would not be covered by the policy of insurance, or if during the claims presentment process there was a material misrepresentation, which would also void the policy. So we would quarterback the investigation and the people, and then we would do what's called an examination under oath a lot of times, then we'd pass our recommendations on to the company, and then they would make their own decision on the claim.
Can you explain to the jury what an examination under oath is?
Sure, it's a lot like, you may have heard of depositions, but it's a lot like that, although the court rules don't apply. There's a provision in the policy of insurance, and every policy of insurance, that says you have to participate in this process called examination under oath, where we get to ask you questions under oath with a court reporter present, and have you give us your side of the story, explain things that we need to know about. We get into some of the details of what was going on before, during, and after the loss. It's kind of their chance to present their side of the story to the insurance company, and it's our chance to find out some details that maybe we don't have yet in the investigation.
And are these examinations under oath, are they recorded?
They are. There's a court reporter present.
And then are they transcribed?
And they are transcribed.
And did you have an opportunity to interview Ms. Linda Stermer?
Yes, we did an examination under oath in 2 parts with her.
In 2 parts? And
Yes.
do you recall the dates of those?
I believe the first one was in February of 07. I believe it was January 7, 07 was the fire. I think February 07 we did the first one. I think the second one was October of 07.
And both of those were transcribed?
They were.
I'm going to show you what's been marked. People proposed exhibit 35 and 36. If you could just take a moment and look through those and see if you recognize those.
These appear to be the transcripts of those examinations under oath, although these particular copies seem to have some redactions, some things that were apparently agreed to be taken out of them.
And so other than the redactions, the transcripts then are, they haven't been altered or changed other than those redactions from your original transcripts?
It would not appear so, no.
And Your Honor, at this time I would move to admit People's Exhibit number 35 and 36 into evidence.
No objections, Your Honor.
Thank you. And as part, I want to, as part of your interviews in February and October, were you able to work with Ms. Stermer and draw out a map?
I believe particularly in the first one, we did ask, as she was describing where things were, both on the property and in the house, we had her draw out maps. I believe I had her sign them and made them exhibits to that examination.
So they're actually an exhibit then to those transcripts?
Correct.
And they're included in those transcripts?
Yes.
So I'm just going to show you a copy. And if you could just verify if that's been included in those transcripts and if that's a fair and accurate representation of what is in those transcripts.
Yes, I don't think I saw the exhibits in the binder, but yes, this was part of the transcript. This exhibit 4, and the EUO exhibit 3. 3 was the one that we had her sign of the inside of the house, and EUO exhibit 4 was the one that we had her draw of the property, driveway, things like that.
Your Honor, just to be safe, I'm going to mark this then as people's proposed exhibit 37, just in case it's not included in those binders. And at this time, I would move then to admit the map that's included as part of the transcript, but we will read it separately. And there are 2 pages.
Ma'am,
No objection.
I do see that those are the last 2 pages of exhibit 36.
So, Your Honor, then I would withdraw the new number of 37. We'll go ahead and just not to confuse the record, we'll keep it as exhibit 36. It's just 2 pages out of exhibit 36. At this time, Your Honor, I'd ask for permission to publish the map to the jurors. And I do have, may the record reflect, I have 15 copies here, 1 for each juror as we're going through transcripts.
Okay.
And when you refer to an EUO, that's your examination under oath, is that correct?
Yes, EUO, examination under oath. So it's just a shorthand term of art in the industry.
And just to be clear, you had referred to this map then as an exhibit in your transcript, and then that is what that exhibit sticker is on that map.
Correct.
So not an exhibit sticker from today's hearing.
It is not, yeah, that is not a trial exhibit number. That was an EUO exhibit number. We had several documents that we collected during that process.
Thank you. So I'm going to have permission to public then the transcripts, Your Honor.
You may.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and then put these up. We're going to start out with the February 27th of 2007 transcript.
Sure.
And we'll put that up on the screen. I'm going to start then, just have you verify the first page. You don't have to read the first page, but if you could just then verify the parties present and the date.
Sure. This occurred on February 27 of 2007. I was there. Mr. Jeff Getting was there, who was Linda Stermer's attorney. Rodney Thuma was a representative of the insurance company, was there, and the court reporter was Rebecca Kerr from Network Reporting.
I'm going to have you go to page 3, and I'm going to have you start about a quarter of the way down where it says Mr. Willison. And if you could just read to the jury from that statement down.
Line 10.
Yes, line 10 down.
My name is Stephen Willison, and I am the attorney for Farm Bureau Insurance. We're here today to take your examination under oath. That is a process by which you participate in the company's investigation of your claim and the events surrounding this loss. This is probably going to be part 1 because it's far too early to have any discussions about the details of your claim, but we did want to get together relatively quickly and talk about the details of the fire. Everything you say is being recorded and eventually will be turned into a typewritten transcript. So it's very important that all of your answers are with words. If you nod your head like you have done recently, or you say, uh-huh, or you point to something in a photograph, I may understand what you're saying, but there's no good way to type that. So from time to time, I may ask you to clarify.
I'll have you continue then through line 14 on the next page, which would be page 4.
Okay, whether you meant yes or no, or to describe what's very obviously what you're pointing at, so that we have a clean record. Okay, and then she responded, I understand. And then I went on, it's also important you understand that you're under oath today. So just like if we were in a courtroom, all the penalties of perjury apply, but maybe more relevant to your insurance claim, you need to understand that the policy of insurance says that if you were to even try to mislead the insurance company, that can be a reason to deny your claim and void your policy. Even if you were the world's worst liar and no one believed you for a second, just the fact that you tried is a reason to deny it. Okay? And she said yes.
And you said that in one of those statements that you thought it was far too early. Can you describe to the jury why you felt it was too early and why you were conducting it then in February and then again in October?
Sure. Obviously, we knew that this claim involved the loss of life and was a total loss fire and was probably going to be big and complicated. And so putting together a claim on a total loss fire can take some time when you have to, if you think about every t-shirt that's in the attic and every little thing that's in your junk drawer, all has to be inventoried and valued and everything else, so that can take some time. But the facts of the fire, we wanted to get into early, and that's because we want to get to the root of it right away. If you are, if in this process you're going to choose to be honest with us, then your memory will be freshest then. And if you're going to choose to be dishonest with us, then you will have the least amount of time to come up with a story. So we wanted to get the details of the loss, the fire first, and then we would come back later and talk about the claim.
And I'm going to have you go to page 9, line 11, and just have you read to the jury then 11 through 15.
I asked, now, the day of the fire, the day before the fire, who was living at your house? She responded, our 3 sons, myself, and Todd. I asked, what about Brittany? She said, no, she was living in Florida.
I'm going to have you then go to page 13, line 13 through 19.
Page 13, line 13?
Line 13, page 13, line 13, read through line 19, please.
I asked, how long were you and Todd married? She said, we were married in 1993. I asked, how long had you been in a relationship prior to that? She said, well, I don't recall exactly how long we were in a relationship before that. We met in 1989. I asked, how did you meet? And she said, my work.
I'm going to have you flip to page 14, and if you could read the entire page, please.
Oh, sure. My question was, since you were married in 1993, have there been any periods of separation? She said, no. Had either of you ever filed for divorce? She said, no. Had either of you ever discussed divorce? She said, yes. When did discussions of divorce start? She said, I don't know exactly. I know that. And then I interjected a month, a year, 10 years. She said, we had talked about it a few times over the last couple of years. My question was, whose idea was it? She said, I think Todd brought it up first. I asked, and then I just need to get a little bit of the flavor of the dynamics of the relationship between the two of you. Todd wanted a divorce and you wanted to stay together, or was it the other way around? I mean, what was going on when you were discussing it but not doing it? She said, I don't know that he was serious when he first brought it up. I think it was just kind of, I don't know, maybe we should get a divorce. I asked, when he first brought it up, what was your reaction? Did you agree or disagree? She said, I did not want a divorce.
And I will have you continue to page 15, if you could read that page for me as well.
At any point in time, did you decide you wanted a divorce? And she said, yes. I said, when did that start? And she said, maybe in the past year or so, and then we would talk about things and everything would be all right. And I asked, I know relationships are complicated, but was there any particular thing that was driving a wedge between the two of you? Any particular topic that was frequently discussed? She said, finances. I said, what about the finances? She said, we always seemed to just not have enough money. I felt that Todd wasn't running his business as well as he could have been, and I felt he should work more. Am I doing this whole page?
Yes, please.
Okay. So then I asked, as in he wasn't doing it smart or he wasn't doing it often enough? And she said, well, I think that kind of goes hand in hand. I think if you're not doing it often enough, I don't think that's very smart. I said, that's true, but sometimes people work all day, all night, but they end up spending more than they make, and so it's not worthwhile. Other people are not working, and that's why and she interjected, I just don't think he was putting enough effort. I said, okay, has there been any discussion of cutting back on any lifestyle or expenses, or selling the house and getting a smaller place, or selling off part of the property?
Now have you read down to line 7.
And she responded, we had sold part of our property. I don't recall exactly what year. I think it may have been 2002 or 2003. So I asked, when you bought it, how much property did you own? She said, close to 120 acres. And I asked, and how much did you sell in 2002 or 2003? She said around 90 acres.
I'm gonna have you slip down then to line 18 and read just to the bottom of the page.
I asked, why did you sell the 90 acres? She said, so that we could build and pay off things that we owed. How much did you sell it for? She responded, I don't recall. I believe it was around the figure 99,000 is in my head for some reason, but I'm not sure if that was the exact amount. It seems that that was about, and I said, so about $1,000 an acre, and she said, I believe so.
And I'm gonna have you read the next page.
How much debt did you pay off with that? She said, I don't know. I asked, was it enough to pay off the debt and build the house? She said, no. I said, so what did you do for the rest? We borrowed. From whom? Bill Fleetwood was her answer. I asked, who's Bill Fleetwood? She said, he's a gentleman here in Lawrence that Todd has done business with quite a bit over the years. And how much did you borrow from Bill? I'm not positive. I know it went in stages. I'm thinking that it was somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 100,000, but it was in stages as we needed different things. Do you still owe Bill today? She said, no. When did you pay off Bill? When we got our first mortgage on the property. I asked, when was that? She said, I believe that was in December 2003. I asked, how much was that mortgage? She said, $200,000. Keep going?
Please.
So then I asked, so you sold property and got roughly $100,000. You borrowed another 100, and then you borrowed 200. So your cost of construction was $300,000. She said, no. How much was the cost of construction? I asked. She said, I don't know. I asked, do you have an estimate? And she said, I don't.
I'm gonna have you continue reading to the bottom.
You seem pretty confident it wasn't 3, and she said, right. I said, so what was it? She answered, I really don't know. I know that we paid off a lot of debt with it. I know that Todd made some business investments with some of it as well. I asked, well, what is your best understanding of how much each of those categories was? She answered, I really couldn't give you a good guess. I said, okay, do you think you had $100,000 of debt? She said, no, I don't believe we had. 50,000? She said, maybe. Then I asked, what kind of business investments are we talking about? And she said, Todd would buy military surplus, gloves, clothing, and then resell them to stores. Boots, like Mickey Mouse boots, that kind of thing. Mop suits, carbon suits, and that kind of stuff in large quantities.
And I'll have you stop there. And if you could go to the next page at the bottom on line 24, just read those last 2 lines in the next page.
I asked if they got a building permit to build the house, and she said yes.
And I'll have you read page 20.
Did you get it inspected? And she said yes. And I asked, what do you have in front of you? And she said, I went to Associated Governmental Services and got these copies of I think they're everything that Todd turned in order to begin construction of our home. I asked, to begin construction? She said, I guess you have to file permits and drawings and diagrams before you can receive a permit to even begin. It gives a layout, but there were changes, significant changes made to it that are not reflected in those drawings. I noticed after I picked it up yesterday. Who did these drawings, do you know? And she said, Todd. I believe that Mr. Fleetwood helped him. And so then we marked that as Exhibit 1 to the examination under oath. I said, we've marked those documents that you gave us as Exhibit 1, right? She said, yes. We'll be back to your floor plan in just a minute. That tells us that you filed these in 1998, right? She said, yes. That wasn't the impression I got of how long you were building it. So what was the delay between 98 filing and beginning to build? She said, Todd had a knee surgery, and so he had to stop working on it completely, and so it sat for a few years.
I'm going to have you continue.
I asked, what did you do in 1998 to finance the beginning of construction? She said, well, the original plan was just to build it as we could afford to build it, and so we had a basement done, and we paid cash for that. Where did you have that cash? She said, what do you mean where? I said, how did you have that lump sum? She said, Todd, through working, just saved that amount and paid for it. So a rich uncle didn't die, you didn't get an insurance policy claim or something like that. She said, no. Then I asked, so how far had the house gotten before he had knee surgery? She said he had, the basement was completely concrete, what was to be concrete, and then he had the trusses, I believe they're across the basement. The thing that was going to hold up the first floor, she said yes, and that was it. And then, when did you restart? Answer, I believe that was in 2002. So it sat for 4 years. She said probably 3 or 4 years.
And I'm going to have you go to page 22 and continue reading that page, please.
And why 3 or 4 years? She said, because Todd's knee surgery, he was unable to work, and we got into substantial debt at the time. So then I asked, that kind of brings us back to you were in debt, you sold some property, you borrowed the mortgage. It sounds like you were back in debt again at the time of the fire when all this stress was going on in your marriage. Or was it just a matter that you were heading back toward that again? Her answer was, I don't think we've ever been out of debt. We'd have some paid down, but I think we were just in debt continuously. I asked, was there ever a discussion of bankruptcy? She said, no. I said, why not? She answered, because we just felt people that filed for bankruptcy are ignoring their debts, and it hurts you more in the long run if you don't continue to try and pay off your debts. I said, so at the time of the fire, what would you estimate your debt was? She answered, I don't know. Maybe, I'm not really sure. Do you want the mortgage included in that? And I said, let's set the mortgage out for now. She said, okay, maybe $100,000 or so.
And I'm going to have you then go to page 23 and then start at line 8 and then just read down.
I asked her where the $100,000 was owed to, and she said Todd had received loans from family members. I asked which family members. She said his mother. I asked Sandra. She said yes. I believe that was about $30,000. His sister Kathy was the most recent, $25,000. His brother Brad, $7,000. What was Kathy's last name? Martone Stermer. When you said Stermer, you saw that I was right by Brad, right? I'm sorry, Brad Stermer, correct. Medical, she said medical bills. I asked, how much do you figure that was? She said, I don't know, maybe $10,000. A truck around $14,000 or $15,000. Mechanic who has the truck, $3,500.
And I'll have you stop there and just go to page 24. And if you could start on that page, please.
I asked how long he had the truck. She said 7 months. I asked if there was anything else. She said, I'm sure there is. I just can't think of what it is right at this minute. The truck, who's that with? She said, do you mean who it's financed through? First Community Federal Credit Union, I believe. FC, First Community, I believe. Or no, First Federal Credit Union, sorry. So I asked, what are your payments on that? She said, close to $500 a month. I asked, are you making monthly payments to mom, sister, brother? She said, no. I asked, do you owe any of your friends or family money? Meaning her instead of Todd. She said, I borrowed $1,000 from my grandmother. I asked, what's her name? She told me Frances Pierce. I asked if there was anyone else, and she said no.
And then I'm going to have you jump down to line 23, and that page, read that to the bottom of the page and continue on to the next.
Were there any other wedge issues in your marriage besides finances? And she said, the horses that I had. I said, okay, what was an issue about the horses? She answered, I just know that he would get frustrated sometimes at the number of horses I had and the work that was involved in taking care of them. He just got tired of that. What about the expenses? She said, no, he never complained too much about that. I asked, how many horses do you own or did you own at the time of the fire? And she said, the number of horses that were at the property at the time of the fire was 12.
And I'll have you stop there, and then if you want to go ahead and switch now to page 33, on line 21, if you'll just read the bottom 5 lines of that and continue on to the next page on 34.
I asked her, what was the most you had been at in your marriage? She said 49. I said 49 horses? And she said, yes. I asked, do you have the facilities for 49 horses? And she said, I leased land for them. And when was the last time you had 49 horses? She said, I believe it was in 2002.
And I'm going to stop you there. If you can switch to page 45 for me, please, on line 12. If you could start there and read to the bottom of the page.
I said, now we talked about issues in your marriage, we talked about finances, we talked about horses. Anything else? She said, pretty much no. I guess that pretty much sums it up. So then I asked, let me go through some other categories. Did either of you have any problems with drugs or alcohol? She said, Todd has had some addictions over the years. I said, like what? She said, to Vicodin. And when was he addicted to Vicodin? She said, about the time that he had his knee surgery, back when that permit was first gotten, when he blew his knee out. And how did he get past that? She said, I talked to his doctor and had the doctor change our prescriptions. Because I had shoulder surgery right before Todd had his knee surgery, and so the doctor prescribed both of us Vicodin. Keep going.
I'm going to have you skip down then to line 11 and read to the bottom of the page.
What other addictions has he had? She said he has smoked marijuana before and sleeping pills. I asked, he used or been addicted to? She said, the sleeping pills I believe he was addicted to. The marijuana, I kind of think he was addicted to that for a very long time, but then he was able to quit smoking it for a long time. He smoked it since then, but not on a daily or regular basis. I asked, sleeping pills? She said, yes. I said, what was he using, or when was he using those? And she said, the few weeks before the fire. And do you think he was addicted to those? And she said, yes. And before then, also, he had been addicted to them. It's been a couple of years.
I'm going to have you go on to page 47 and continue on.
When was the last time that you saw him take a sleeping pill? She said, the weekend of the fire. The day of the fire? She said, I think it was the night before, the day before. I asked her when. She said, when I got home that night, he took that and then his medicine for his ear infection that he had. I said, what kind of sleeping pill did he take? And she said, Ambien CR. I asked if that is over the counter. She said, no, it's a prescription. I asked, did he take any that morning? She said, I don't know. Did you see him take any medications that morning? She said, I seen him take his cough syrup, and I know he took some pills, but I don't know which pills he took. I asked, several pills? She said, I don't know. I said, you said some pills. I'm just trying to get an idea of what you saw. She answered, I just saw that he had his bottles next to him, and he opened them and took his medicine. I don't know. What bottles were there? What was in the bottles? She said, I don't know what the drugs were. There were some that were prescribed by the doctor for his ear, and, I don't know.
And go ahead and continue then until the bottom of the page, please.
All right. So then I keep going. I asked, like painkillers or like antibiotics? And she said, I think they might have been antibiotics or antihistamines. I'm not sure exactly which. Which else was there? She said, that's all I can recall sitting right there. Any sleeping pills there? She said, I don't think there weren't there. They were in the bathroom. I don't know if he took any of them. Did he act like he was under the influence of any drugs at any point the day of the fire? She said he was loopy, but he had been. He had been that way for the last couple of weeks. He had, displayed where he was just kind of doped up, kind of. I don't know how else to describe it, just loopy, and like he'd be talking and then he would just stop in the middle of a sentence and then come back to it minutes later or something, as if there was no pause. Just kind of weird. My son described him one day as being stoned. I asked, did you ever confront him about it? Did you ever ask him what he was using? She said, yeah. I said, what did he say? She said, not to worry about it. It wasn't any of my business.
I'm going to have you go to page 49 and continue on that page.
I asked, are there any other addictions? She said, not that I'm aware of. I asked, did Todd ever have an affair? She said, not that I'm aware of. Did you ever have an affair? She said, no. I said, did either of you ever accuse the other one of having an affair? She said, yes. When and who, I asked. She said, well, Todd has female friends, I have male friends, and we'd get angry, I guess, sometimes, and just accuse the other person or ask the other person, but never, I don't think, ever seriously. I guess just kind of, so I asked, had either of you made that accusation within 6 months of the fire? She said, yeah, Todd had. I asked, who did he accuse you of having an affair with? And she said, well, it was actually kind of funny because he came down to where I worked to surprise me one night to meet me for break, and I just so happened to have fallen at work and wasn't there at work. I was at the hospital. And when he called me on my cell phone, I answered it, and he says, are you at work? I said, no. And right then he says, who the hell are you with? And I told him my boss had to take me to the hospital. So then Todd came to the hospital, and everything was fine. But it was just kind of weird that he decides to show up and surprise me on the day that I end up twisting my ankle and going to the hospital. So
And I'll just have you read the next 2 lines, 6 and 7.
Where were you working at the time? She said, Kemlin.
I'll have you drop down to line 18 on page 50, and if you could read to the bottom of the page.
Any other accusations? She said he would just sometimes yell something like that, like, are you seeing somebody else? Because, we had talked about divorce, but you never had? And she said, no. Did he ever accuse you of being in a relationship with a woman? And he asked me if I was.
And I'll have you read on page 51 down to line 16, please.
With who? She said, my friend Kate Fox. I said, had you and she ever had a relationship like that? And she said, no. So I asked, and what was his basis of that accusation? Did he tell you? And she said, yeah, because Kate had attempted suicide and was in the hospital, and I was really distraught over it. We were really close, and we worked together, and I was just really worried about her. And he asked if we were lovers. Was that a serious question, or was he just telling you to stop worrying about her? She said, I think he was getting sick of me worrying about her so much, and it was, just his way of, putting things.
I'll have you read then 15 and 16 and stop on that page.
I said, okay, you worked with Kate Fox at Chemlink, and she said yes.
And then I'm going to have you go to page 52, and if you could read this page for me, please.
I asked if there were any other recent accusations of affairs. She said no. And then I asked her, you haven't accused him in the last 6 months? And she said no. I asked, what about abuse? Any abuse in the relationship? And she said, yes. I said, what kind, when? And she said, different times through the years, just different things. I asked, let's just talk about that in the last year. She answered, the most recent was around Thanksgiving time. He had shoved me across the room, had thrown my cell phone at me, and he pushed me into the wall. I asked, what was that fight about? And she said, part of it was me making a pineapple upside down cake to work for a potluck and not having made one for home. But I had all the ingredients to make 2. I just hadn't made the one for home yet. I was going to make it on the weekend. And then that was about the time that he said, you're treating your coworkers better than your family. And then that night before the fire, he wanted to make love and I didn't. And he came into the bedroom and tried to pry my legs apart and take my pants off, but I didn't let him.
And I'm going to have you continue on that on page 53, please, that page.
I said, so was there any sexual intercourse that night or not? And she said no. And I said, how did you stop him? And she said, I told him it wasn't going to make anything better and that I didn't want to. And if he made me, I would tell the police. I had never said anything like that to him before, so at least he knew I was serious. I asked, have you ever hit him or thrown anything at him? And she said, no. I said, has he ever accused you of it? And she asked, of hitting him? Yes. And I said, but it wasn't true? And she said, right. Did you ever call the police? Did he ever call the police on you? She said, no. I said, did you ever call the police on him? And she said, yes. Before we ever moved to Lawrence, sometime prior to 1996. I couldn't give you the date. I didn't actually call the police on him. The girl was staying at our house, called the police, but I had talked with them. And at that time, he had hit me and pushed me quite a bit, and I had some marks on me, and 2 police officers came, a male and a female. And when he came out, the female officer was with me, and I was about ready to file a report. And he came out and said, are you sure you want to do this? because you'll go to jail too. And I asked what he meant, and he said, well, if you accuse me of hitting you, then I'll accuse you of hitting me, and we'll both go to jail. All the grandparents were out of town at the time, and the police officer said that was true, and that if we didn't have someplace for the kids to go, that they'd have to have, I don't remember who they said, but it came down to like protective services would have to come and get the kids. And Todd says, are you sure you want to do this? And I talked to the police officer, and she said, well, yeah, it's his word against your word, and if you both say that you both got hit, then we have to take both of you in and let the judge decide. So I didn't pursue it any further, and they left, and we spent the night there in the house, and he apologized to me.
You continue.
So that was the only time that you called the police on him, and she said, well, like I said, I didn't call the police were called. But as far as abuse between he and I believe those two incidents were around Thanksgiving time and that time.
So I'm going to stop you right there. So in the duration of the marriage, she's saying that she's had two incidents, one prior to 1996 and then one at Thanksgiving time.
And the one the night before the fire.
And the one the night before the fire. Thank you
That's
very
what she
much.
wanted me to believe, yes.
And then I'm going to then have you start at line 24 on page 54, if you could continue on there.
I said, thank you very much. Who called the police around Thanksgiving? And she said, Kate Fox. I asked, what? And she said, Kate Fox. I said, what was Kate Fox doing there? And she answered, she wasn't there. She had called me on the phone to come and pick me up for work because we rode together and most every day. And I was crying and hysterical and upset, and I told her I couldn't talk to her, and so she called the police.
And I'm going to have you jump down to line 21 and read the bottom of that page, please.
I asked, this incident the night before the fire, where he tried to force himself on you, what kind of situation did that create between the two of you? She answered, he wasn't happy. I said, how are you? And she said, well, I actually felt relieved that he stopped. I mean, he kept yelling at me about it and different things, but not too bad. And he told me that if I would just make love with him, that everything could be just fine.
I'll have you continue.
I said, did you at any time from that moment on? She clarified, make love with him. I said, yes. And she said, no. I asked any sort of sexual contact at all the day of the fire, and she said, no. Any more instances like that where he was trying to force it? And she said, no. I asked, did you tell anybody about this incident before the fire? And she said, no. I said, have you told anyone about this since the fire? She said, yes. I asked, who? She said, I told my mother, I told Mr. Getting, I told my counselor.
Now I'll have you stop there, and if you can go to page 57, start halfway through line 23.
But up until Kate Fox and I began working together, that was the most I had ever hung out with another female, and that was mainly because we worked together and we carpooled every single day.
And I'm going to have you stop there, and if you can go to page 62, please, on line 21.
I was asking about medications, and she said she was taking Lexapro since November of 06, and I was given the prescription for Ambien CR. That was my prescription, but I wasn't taking it.
And I'm going to have you then stop and go to page 63 and go to the fourth line down and just read lines 4 and the portion of 5.
This was her response. She said, the Ambien, I took it a couple of times, but it made me feel too groggy and too sluggish.
So you can stop there.
Okay.
And then I'm going to have you go to page 64, line 16. If you could just read 4 lines for me.
You described him in the morning of the fire having a tray of pill bottles by him. I meant what? And she said, no, I just said a couple of pill bottles, and I think that they were just what was prescribed for his ear.
I'm going to have you go to page 66, line 10, and if you could read that from 10 to the bottom of the page.
66, line 10. We're in the middle of an answer. She says, I was thinking about some things, and I had spoken with an attorney that we know who had handled some of Corey's custody and stuff, and asked him that if Todd ever did decide he wanted a divorce, if he would represent me. I asked, who is that? She said, Mr. Jeff Gaggie, Gagie, Gagie. But I don't know if you would need that because you said within the last couple of years, and that was back in maybe 2002 or so. So it was a few more years than I was thinking. I asked, you contacted Mr. Gagey? She said, well, actually, I was using Mr. Is it Gagey or Gage? Do you know?
Gagey.
Gagey, okay. Well, I actually was using Mr. Gagey for the rescue case of the 23 horses, and I asked, you needed an attorney to rescue horses? And she said, yeah, sometimes you do. I asked, I mean, I'm not opposed to using attorneys, and she said, sometimes you do. And, you know, Todd had got frustrated and upset about so many horses coming in all at once, and the fact that the previous owner of them had changed her mind about turning them over and that. So Mr. Gagey was representing me on that, and I told him that Todd was really upset and frustrated, and he had spewed off about getting a divorce.
I'll have you stop there.
Sure.
And then I'll just have you skip down to line 14.
When did you have that conversation with Mr. Gagey? She said, I don't know, probably sometime around 2002, then again in November of 06.
And I'll have you just jump down to line 19 and continue there.
This is her answer. In November, I went to Mr. Gagey and asked him if he would do a divorce for me because I just decided that I just couldn't keep living this way. I had told Todd after that it was just too much, and he gave me some paperwork at that time. I didn't file, I didn't pay him or anything, but he gave me the paperwork that would be necessary to file. So when you asked me if I filed, no, I had never filed. But yes, I did talk to him pretty extensively about it, and I had told him about some different incidences that happened and that made me feel really uncomfortable.
I'll have you continue.
I asked her, like, what? And she said, well, Todd had been out hunting one morning, and I was sitting in the dining room at the computer before we moved it into the other room, and he came up the stairs. He was holding his gun and cleaning it, and he was holding his gun and a cleaning kit. And out of the corner of my eye, I could see that the gun was open. It was like a shotgun or a rifle. And he was carrying a cleaning kit. And he came over and he set the cleaning kit on the dining room table behind me and just held up the gun. Well, I could see the reflection in the computer screen that the gun was not pointed directly at my head, but I never turned around and faced him or anything at that point and didn't act like I seen him exactly what he was doing. And he held it there and he said, I'm really sorry I have to do this. And I turned around and just looked at him and I said, you're a jerk. And he said, why, what? And I said, why would you joke around like that? And he says, you were so scared. And he just started laughing at me. And he had told me Todd had been really studying the Bible a lot Todd had been really studying the Bible a lot this past year, 2006. I asked, he told me? And she said, pardon me? And I said, did you say someone told you Todd was studying the Bible? And she said, no. I said, Todd had been studying the Bible pretty heavily over the past year, a lot more than he ever had before, and, well, just a lot. And he told me that in the Bible it says that a man who gets a divorce from a woman, if she should remarry after that divorce, then it's still considered, in the Bible, it's considered adultery. So that man who divorces that woman is considered just as much of a sinner because he caused that sin. And he says, so I can't divorce you, but you can divorce me. So I told Mr. Gagey that. Keep going?
Nope, I'm going to have you stop there. I'll have you read on line 19 down.
I asked, so any more episodes like that in between November and when the fire occurred? And she said, just a lot of little things. Like he would talk about divorce. He would talk about death. He would talk about suicide. He would talk about insurance. He would talk about moving to Canada. Just a lot of just different things.
And I'll have you read that on page 70.
When would he talk about suicide? She asked, what do you mean when? Just different times? Like he'd say, I'd be better off dead. I'm so sick of this. I asked what was going on when he'd say, I'm so sick of this. She said, being in debt all the time, not having energy to work on the house. You know, our house wasn't complete, and he would stay home, not go to work, not work on the house, not do anything. He didn't, this last year, I mean, he was an avid hunter before, and we always had a lot of meat, deer meat with that. And this last year, he hardly ever went hunting. He got 2 deers, and I think that's the least he got in many years. The boys wouldn't go hunting with him this year. I asked why. She said, just too busy with other things, and that frustrated Todd. And he would say things like, the boys don't even enjoy hunting anymore, and I don't enjoy hunting anymore. He didn't play church basketball this year, and just a lot of different things. He just didn't. I asked, did you guys attend church regularly? She said, no.
Now, have you stopped there?
All right.
And then if you could go to page 75, at the bottom of the page, on line 24.
I asked, what time did you wake up the morning of the fire? She said, probably around 7 o'clock.
And I'll have you continue then on page 76.
Did you have an alarm set? She said, no. I asked, were all 3 sons and Todd home when you woke up? She said, yes. Who all was awake when you woke up? She said, no one. I asked, what did you do? And just to clarify, this is the part of the examination where I go through moment by moment on the day of the fire. I want to know everything that happened so that we have a very clear timeline and we can start to verify the story. So I asked her, what did you do? She said, just puttered around about the house. I asked, I really need to know all the puttering. She said, I'm sorry. I'm trying to think what I did first thing. I always get up and brush my teeth right away. I got dressed. At some point that morning, I remember straightening my bathroom. Did you do any cooking? Did you do any laundry? She said, not right away that day, no. I asked, are you a coffee gal? She said, no. Well, I went down to the convenience store and got some eggs, and I believe it seems like it was Smoky Links and maybe some milk. I said, okay, wait, when you left to go to the convenience store, was anyone else awake? She said, no. I asked, do you know what time that was? She said, I know it was before 10 o'clock. I asked, you went to what store? She said, the Village Marathon. I asked in Lawrence. She said, uh-huh.
I mean, stop, just jump down to line number 9.
What all did you buy there? She said, I bought some eggs, some, I believe it was Smoky Links. I think I got some milk, and I filled up my blazer. I asked, so you did buy gas for the blazer? And she said, yes. I asked, how much gas? Do you remember? She said, I don't remember. I think the total bill for everything combined all came to, I believe, around $20. I asked, anything else? She said, no. I asked, did you have any gas? Did you put any gas in a gas can that day? She said, no. I said, are you sure? She said, I know I didn't. And I asked, you know you did not? And she said, right.
Now have you continue on page 78.
How long were you there? She said, not very long, just long enough to do that, just to purchase those things. I asked, what time did you get back home? She said, within minutes. We only lived 5 minutes away at the most. I asked, so you were home in 15 minutes? She said, maybe 15, 20 minutes. I was gone a total of. I asked, now what? She said, I began cooking. I asked, is there anybody awake? She said, I can't remember if Todd was awake yet or not. I know that while I was cooking, he was up, but I can't remember if he was up before then or not. I asked, did you start cooking right away? She said, as soon as I got back, yes. I asked, the eggs and sausage? She said, yes. And then I put coffee on for Todd because he is a coffee drinker. Okay. And at some point he was awake, and she said, yes. I asked, while you were cooking? She said, yes. What else happened? I told him when he came out into the kitchen, I told him I had gone down and gotten those things and told him that I used the debit card. The debit card for what bank? I asked. She said, his debit card from his business account. I asked, why did you use the debit card from his business account? She said, because I knew there was money in there. I asked, where does he have his business account? She said, it's now LaSalle Bank in Paw Paw. I asked, do you have any records of that account with you today? She said, I don't. I'm sorry. I said, can you get those for me? She said, I can try. I don't know if the bank will let me have them because my name was not on the account. Keep going?
Yes, please.
So I asked, how did you get his debit card? She said, I took it out of his wallet. I asked, was that common for you? She said, yes. And then I continued my question, or was that unusual? She said, no, it was common for me. I asked, was it common to use the business account to buy groceries? She said, yes. He would write me a check from there for different things. I would either deposit it into the joint account or cash it and use it for whatever we were supposed to use it for. I told him about other purchases I made with it over the course of the weekend, and he got pretty upset because I hadn't written them into the register yet, and the fact that I had used it a few times. So I asked, so what did you buy over the weekend with it? She said, I bought a disposable camera. I asked why. She said, my grandmother had her 90th birthday party on Saturday, and I walked off and forgot to take my digital camera. And so I grabbed a disposable so I could get some pictures of family, and I filled prescriptions at Walgreens and at Walmart on Saturday.
And I'm going to have you stop there, and I'm going to have you go to page 81. Yes.
About 5 minutes or
Oh,
so,
that's fine.
unless you're getting near the end, but I don't think you
No,
are.
so I mean, we can end at any time, Your Honor.
Want to do it now?
That would be fine. We can do it now if you want, if the court would like to.
Okay. So, I don't think anyone's objecting. Okay. So, let me read you my admonition again.
Should I step down to it?
Yes, thank you. Ms. Ivy?
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Willison, we kind of left off yesterday. I just want to recap a couple of the issues that we touched on, the topics. First of all, we talked about her debt. Can you just recap quickly, and then we'll talk further on anything that might be in the further transcript?
She owed about $100,000 to family and friends. And then she mentioned to me that after the fire, she noticed that apparently there was a foreclosure on the property earlier, and they got it out of foreclosure, but then Todd hadn't made, the way she put it was that Todd hadn't made any payments since then. So they were several months behind on their mortgage payment as well.
And did she, from yesterday's testimony, did she talk to you about why she was frustrated with Todd?
Oh, very much so. I mean, my impression was that she took every opportunity she could to make Todd look like a bad guy. She was frustrated about him.
I mean, he's making impressions, and it's either a statement that's in the transcript and not what he feels like that she was trying to do. I think that is totally out of line.
I will sustain that objection.
She mentioned several addictions to Vicodin, marijuana, sleeping pills, mentioned him being loopy the day of the fire. She talked about domestic violence, where it was always his fault, never hers. She talked about, particularly the incident at Thanksgiving before the fire, where she was so distraught that her friend Kate Fox had to call police for her. And then the night before the fire, where he attempted to rape her, she talked about him not working hard enough, not working often enough. She told a story about one time Todd declared that he was leaving, and anybody who's going to come with me, meaning the boys, should get in the car right now. And she made it into this story that he repeated several times, and no one came with him. So it was just little things like that, where she was always pointing out bad things.
And that kind of recapped yesterday.
Yes.
So how much was this insurance claim that she was submitting?
I believe she was, it ended up being over $400,000. I can look up the exact number if you'd like.
I think that's a general. I think we're good with that.
Yes.
And then
Close to 5, if I recall.
close to 5?
Yes.
And then did she tell you that she'd received any other insurance money when you interviewed her?
She had received, I think it was $90,000 from perhaps a life insurance policy. We talked about I think it was in the October statement with her.
So I'm going to do things a little bit different today. The jury has the transcripts. They can read everything, the complete transcripts as part of an exhibit. So I'm going to ask you today, we're going to group it into groups. And if you can just summarize, because we do have 2 entire transcripts, I'm going to have you summarize the topics for us.
Sure.
And first of all, I want to ask you, we have a lot of pages of 2 transcripts there.
Yeah.
Why do you ask so many questions about a particular topic?
Well, when we go into these, I mean, the purpose of these is to find out information and also to allow the insured to tell their side of the story. So, you know, I will ask a number of questions and then start to probe into more details on specific topics. You know, what I would always train my attorneys on is that, you know, the truth has a lot of detail to it. And when you make up a story, that's usually pretty shallow. So when someone says something like, I don't know, just as an example, we went to McDonald's, that's a pretty easy thing to come up with. But when I start asking you, well, who drove? What did you order? Those kinds of details. If it really happened, you either remember what happened or you don't remember what happened, but you don't get it wrong. If you're making the story up and now I'm asking you things that you didn't think of, now you start to make it up on the fly and other stories may not match. So when I run into things in an examination where that's an interesting data point or that's different than what other things in the file say, I start to probe deeper, because then the insured will either explain why it looks odd to me, you know, by giving me the details that make sense, or will take the rope to hang themselves because they're going to continue lying. And so when I find something interesting, I've got to get into the details for it to make sense, for me to be able to make an informed decision about whether it was true or false.
So as we're going through these topics, if you could describe any inconsistencies that you saw over the course of these transcripts, or maybe things you had to drill in, I'd appreciate it.
All right, I'll do my best.
So let's start out with just the overall topic of the relationship. What did she tell you about affairs?
That she was never unfaithful to him.
So I want to make sure that I'm not asking a wrong question. I don't want you to give me your opinion about her answers. I'm just going to ask you to kind of summarize what she said
Sure.
over the course of these transcripts. So let's start out with affairs. Can you just summarize what she told you about the affairs over the course of the February and the October examination under oath?
She told me that she was never unfaithful to him, that he had accused her of affairs, but that she wasn't having any. There was some concerns about her work, that he had gone to work one time checking up on her. He accused her of having an affair with Kate Fox, and she denied all of those, but apparently she admitted that he had accused her of that.
And did she say if the horses were any sort of their marriage frustration?
She said that was a wedge issue. She had, I think it was 20-some horses at the time of the fire. At one time she had 49 horses, but they had no barn. So these horses were just out apparently in the field. And 20 large animals, I'm sure.
And I'm going to not have you give any opinions, so I just want you to
Nope,
summarize
but
for
that
me,
was
okay?
the wedge issue, was both acquiring them and maintaining them was apparently the issue.
And I think we've already talked about the debt, so I'm going to skip over that. So can you summarize then over the course of those 2 transcripts what she had told you about divorce?
I think we read yesterday some things about Attorney Gaggy, that he had given her paperwork in November. She mentioned that I believe it was a relative of hers wanted her to just slip out, and she said she couldn't leave him without talking to him first. She had talked to Corey apparently a week before the fire about her plan to divorce and leave. She told the story about Todd being sick of everything and wanting to leave that I mentioned earlier. She wasn't wearing her wedding ring at the time of the fire, although she did explain that she works with caulk at work, and so she wouldn't wear it to work, and sometimes she'd forget to put it back on. And when we got into some of the details of the events around the fire, I wanted to clarify whether she intended to leave, and she told me that she knew all along that she was going to leave on that day the fire occurred. But then at the same time, she told me that she never really wanted to get a divorce from him. She was hoping that leaving might prompt him into counseling or something like that. So, but she had given him the paperwork for Mr. Gaggy apparently the night before the fire as part of that fight they had the evening before the fire.
And we already talked about that she had said comments about the Ambien and the marijuana. So I'll skip over those topics.
Sure.
And you talked a little bit about the domestic violence that we were reading yesterday. Were there more instances or questions than pertaining to domestic violence in the marriage?
Well, yeah, I mean, she told a very dramatic story at one point about the night before the fire, him trying to force himself upon her sexually, forcing her legs apart, trying to take off her pants. She threatened to call the police, and that is the only reason why he stopped. But then I'd hear a story about, she gets up the next morning and makes breakfast for him. So again, I had to probe into that area more. Then suddenly it became less rapey and more he just desired to have sex. And then it went back to, no, he was forceful with me. So there was a shifting take on things as I would probe into details. When one thing wouldn't match up with another, I'd ask about it, and then we'd get a slight change.
And did she talk to you about how many times there was any incidents of any physicalness between her and Todd in terms of violence?
She said it was off and on throughout the years, and she was kind of vague about it. That's why I asked her specifically, well, what about police incidences? And she told me about one in 1996, and she told me about Thanksgiving, were the times that police were called, but she was careful to say that she didn't call the police, apparently on either of those occasions. But there was no record of domestic violence, no charges against either of them that I was able to find.
And she told you that?
And she did say that as well, yes.
And any other altercations that she talked about, or the number of incidents that she would have had in her 13-year marriage?
I mean, I think at one point I asked her if it was 20 or 25, and she said that seemed like a high number to her, so it was less than that. But as I dug into details, I guess I didn't follow up on a specific number, and she didn't. I don't think she had one either.
Okay. And we talked about her frustration with Todd's job. Anything additional on that?
I think we read yesterday about that he didn't work smart, and he didn't work hard enough, he didn't work often enough, he didn't make enough money, was basically the gist of it. Mm-hmm.
So now I want to get into the details of the night before.
Sure.
So did she tell you where the boys were the night before?
Well, yeah. What I was interested in, and typically this is my normal MO in these examinations under oath, is, whenever you got home before the fire, everything that you did, everything that happened until the fire.
It's not being responsive to the question that was asked.
If you could rephrase the question.
I'm sorry.
So that you can be responsive to it.
Sure.
What's your approach when you're talking about the night before?
I want to know every detail of everything that happened. I want to know everybody who was there. I want to know, because anything could end up causing a fire. So, if you brushed your teeth, do you have an electric toothbrush? If you made breakfast, did you use the stove, right? All of those details, who was home, who left, when did they leave? I get into all those details starting from the night before, or whenever you got home before the fire, to whenever you left. And so with this case, it was the night before. She said she got home around 10 or 10:30. I believe she was at her grandmother's maybe 90th birthday party. And when she got home, she said that Todd and the boys were home. The boys were in the basement, but when she first got home, she didn't go down there. She talked to Todd at the beginning.
And what did she say that conversation with Todd was?
It turned into a fight about the debit card, use of the debit card, spending money, not recording things in the ledger.
Your Honor, I want to again object to the characterization that's being made in reference to this witness. He's stating that there was a fight, and there is absolutely nothing in the transcript that states that there was a fight.
Citing, can you get to point where?
I have the exact page numbers.
Okay.
Yeah. So in one of the transcripts, I'm going to have you pull up page 85.
Sure.
Which transcript?
I think they're all labeled 1 to 200 and something. So page 85.
It's in 35. It's in 35.
So did you ask her to describe that conversation on Saturday night on page 85 and 86?
She said that the
Can you stop
conversation.
and tell me what line it is so I can have then Jay bring it up for us?
Right. I'm just looking to try and find the right spot. Back on page 84 at the bottom, she said, line 24 and 25. He screamed a couple of times, but it was argumentative, but quieter. It wasn't calm. Again, she repeated on page 85, no, it wasn't calm, but it wasn't terrible. That conversation lasted about a half an hour. I asked her, so that took us to about 11 o'clock, and she agreed.
So you interpreted that as that they had fought.
Yes.
Can we approach?
It may.
So you described, I think you just read in that he screamed a couple times, but it was rather argumentative but quieter, correct?
Correct. She had showed him the divorce paperwork. He told her that she should, quote, pack her shit and leave. At some point, I originally thought it was in the conversation the night before, and then later I think she said that it was Sunday morning, but he said he said she could have the blazer. She told him Saturday night that the boys would stay with him and that she'd be going to Kim's house.
And I want to talk a little bit about when she was talking about when she went to bed then after this argument.
Right. Initially, that's when she told me that that's when this rape accusation happened, about forcing himself upon her. And then she told him that if he continued, she'd call the police. And he kept yelling at her that if she'd just have sex with him, everything would be fine. Eventually, then she told me that she went downstairs to the basement where the boys were watching TV, and told me that she laid on the couch with Trenton and fell asleep and spent the night down in the basement. I said, well, wait a minute, I thought that you were in the bedroom and Todd was forcing himself on her. And then she said that, after I confronted her with that, she said that, well, what happened was she went downstairs, she fell asleep cuddling with the boys, and then she went back upstairs to brush her teeth, and then that's when that happened, and then she went back downstairs to go to sleep.
And so then she said she slept in the basement.
Correct. And then she told a story about Todd fussing with the furnace in the middle of the night, which I guess was also in the basement.
And she said she heard that when she was sleeping in the basement?
Yes.
And did she say what he was doing in the furnace?
Apparently on Sunday, he told her that he had to bleed the line because it was blowing cold air, is what she told me.
And did she tell you what she did the day before the fire, on January 6th, before the boys left?
On the day of the fire?
Yes.
Yeah. So she apparently was the first one up. She wanted to go, she wanted to make breakfast for everyone. So she went to the convenience store at the Marathon gas station, bought, I believe it was sausage and eggs, and she said topped off the fuel tank in her Blazer. I asked her a couple of times, a couple of different ways, if at any point she put gasoline into a gas can. She told me she absolutely did not. She was absolutely sure that she did not put gas in a gas can. She only topped off the tank of the Blazer. But then I was struck by the fact that she said that her total purchase was,
I'm gonna have you take your.
Yes.
Sir,
Well,
if
he
you
was
could
struck by-
answer the questions without giving your own opinion.
all right. Yes, I'd be happy to do that. Yes. She also told me that buying all of those things, including topping off the tank on the Blazer, came to about $20. So it must not have been, nope. So that's what she told me.
Okay. And then when she got back, you had, I think, alluded to a conversation between her and Todd about using the debit card. Was that also about the debit card use that morning?
Yes. In fact, she said to her, you knew I didn't have any money to get this stuff. I was going to have to use the debit card, although after the fire, I believe.
I'm going to have you stop you there. In terms of just her statements, if you could just talk about her statements.
She said that she didn't have any money to use it other than the debit card. She said that she spent a total of $50, $60 that weekend. And that particular fight, when she got home from the gas station, lasted about 10 minutes. She again described it as him screaming at her while he was sitting at the bar. And apparently then he told her again to just pack her stuff and leave.
Okay. And then did she say what she did after this discussion?
She then decided to go down and wake up the boys and send them out of the house. She gave them money to go to the movies or go shopping, she said, because she thought that she and Todd would be arguing and she didn't want the boys to hear it. And she was going to pack. She explained to the boys that that was the day that she'd be leaving, and they did not seem terribly upset by that, she told me. She also told the boys that they'd be staying with their dad to finish the school year.
And did she tell you how the boys left?
Yeah, she said that she didn't want to ask Todd permission for them to leave, so they should go out the basement door, is what she told me. I guess it was a walkout house, and they should go out the basement door and leave without saying anything to their father. Later on, she said that she went out the basement door with them because she had to, I believe, do something with the water trough for the horses. And so she went out with them, told them to wait while she got her purse out of the car and put it in the van, and sent them away in the Blazer because they didn't like the boys driving the van, which meant that she would have to, she said, use the van to leave Todd. And she told the boys, and she told me a couple of times that she told the boys to make sure you call before you come home, because I want to know where you are and where I am, and I may have to come trade cars with you or whatever. But the plan was that the boys would have the car and she would have the van, and Todd would be home with no vehicle.
And did she tell you then approximately what time the boys left?
They left between 11 and 11:30, I believe.
And then did she tell you what she did after the boys left?
Yeah, that's when she apparently went back upstairs and gave Todd breakfast. She said she made plenty of food for the boys to eat, but because Todd was yelling at her, she just gave them money for them to eat somewhere else. So she ate in the kitchen, Todd ate in the recliner. She mentioned doing laundry. She mentioned putting Christmas ornaments away because...
So I'm going to stop you there. So she makes breakfast and then she says she starts doing these tasks?
Correct.
Okay, and then go on. What task was she doing after breakfast?
She did laundry. She put Christmas decorations away. She said that she did the dishes and, like, with the dishwasher loaded, unloaded the dishwasher. She said she began to pack a suitcase down in the basement, and then she went upstairs to get some things out of her bedroom. When she was up in her bedroom, she saw a pamphlet for an acne medicine that one of her sons was on. And so she lay down on the bed and started reading the acne pamphlet. And then apparently she fell asleep.
Did she say what happened or how she woke up?
She said that when she got up and came out of the room, Todd asked her for juice. Apparently just said, "Do we have juice?" And then she went and got it for him. And then she went back downstairs. And then immediately described when she went downstairs that he was screaming at her, walking around upstairs, flushing the toilet, ranting and raving.
And that's why she's downstairs and he's upstairs?
That's what she told me.
Okay. And then, did she say what he was screaming?
Things like, no one will ever have you, calling her unpleasant names, just basically ranting and raving about their relationship.
And that's when she was downstairs doing laundry?
Correct.
And did she say when he was doing this, telling her these things, what she did down in the laundry room?
At one point, she said she slammed the laundry door in anger, but I don't recall any sort of other retaliation that she did. She said that in her experience, she found that it was best to just let Todd vent his feelings.
And then, so she's downstairs doing the laundry. Did she tell you then what happened?
She said at some point the ranting, screaming turned into screaming when she was folding laundry. And once she heard him scream in a different way, she ran upstairs to see what had happened. When she got upstairs, she saw fire from the half wall between the dining room and the living room to where Todd was standing. I don't know if you have that Exhibit 3 from the EUO.
Did you actually have her mark then?
That's when
she
we
saw?
started having her draw things out for us, yes.
Somebody Is this the exhibit that you're referring to?
Yes, and that is her signature on the bottom right corner. So she, what we did, I believe I traced the outline of the house because she said that the walls were different than the plans. So we just traced the outline of the house and then she drew the interior stuff. She told me that she came to the top of the stairs, which you can see I had her indicate top at the top of the stairs. And that the fire was from the half wall. You can see half wall next to the dining room. To where Todd was standing, which is the small circle over toward the master bedroom.
I'm going to stop you there real quick.
Sure.
So when you say the small circle by the bedroom, let's see if I can get it. Right there?
Yep.
That little circle, is that the one that she marked where Todd
She
was?
said that's where Todd was standing, and then the X over by the half wall, that's where Todd's chair was.
Okay.
She said there was fire on both sides of Todd, that she saw his upper body was actually in flames, and the fire went from him all the way to the chair, and that the chair and the half wall were on fire. But she said there was no fire towards the bedrooms.
Which would be then this side over here.
Correct. And she said that the fire that she saw going from the half wall to that circle did not go to where the fireplace was.
Okay. And did she say, once she marked this up and she's describing what she sees, did she tell you what she did?
She ran. She said she ran. She felt like she had to get out of there. And then as she was running out of there, she thought, oh, I should call for help. So she ran toward the kitchen from the top of the stairs. She ran towards the kitchen and out the front door of the house, where apparently the van was, and the van had the keys in the ignition. And she decided that she would drive to the neighbors to call for help because her phones were inside the house.
So can you explain, did she talk to you then about what she did when she came out of the house?
Yeah, and this is where things got a bit confusing.
All he needs to do is just read her answer from the transcript.
I can just say, I'm just trying to summarize it.
Sure. I'll phrase it a different way.
Okay.
Can you read from the transcript?
Well, I can refer to the page, Your Honor, with his
Okay.
answer, and we can pull the page up.
Okay.
I think that would be easier, because I think when Attorney Willison was saying, there's multiple sections in the transcript that address this issue. So it's a summary, and then there's going to be different places we can go in different transcripts.
She'll
Yeah,
provide.
that's why I asked, he needs to just read. She either asked it the question from the transcript and the answer that was given. That would be sufficient.
I'll allow her to proceed in whatever manner she chooses, just like you will be allowed to proceed in your cross as you see fit.
So I want to start out then with maybe the first conversation you had with her. If you can summarize what she said when she went out of the house.
She said, as she came out of the house, she heard a thud behind her and looked back, and the door was shut. She did not see Todd come out of the house. She got into the van, was going to turn around, so she backed up straight, she said. And I think this is where we started to have her draw what was marked as Exhibit 4 to the examination under oath.
Okay, so I'm going to have your go to, is this the drawing that you're referring
Yep.
to ignore Exhibit 4?
Yes, if you could maybe
We'll
zoom
keep
in more.
this up. And so she said she backed up straight, and then what happened?
So she backed straight up. She didn't back up very far, and that's when she saw Todd in the yard.
And then
She
did she-
marked the position where she saw Todd in the yard with an X.
And so there's an X marked on this floor plan. Ooh.
So right next to the house, if you
Right
zoom
there?
in, right next to the house, she wrote van in the driveway there.
Okay, right
And-
where I've got it zeroed in.
And she said she backed straight up the driveway and then saw him standing where the X was.
Okay. All right, and if you could continue. So she saw
Said
him.
he was on fire. She was in the van facing the front door of the house. And then she drew a van with the number 2 in it.
Okay, so we'll pull that up. Oh. Number 2.
Yep.
Okay, what is the number 2?
And that's where the van was when she saw him. So she pulled up and stopped the van in the position where she marks number 3.
And there's 2 number 3s there. One has a line through it. Can you explain why that is?
Yeah, she decided that she had driven off the path, apparently wanted to change the location, so she changed
So
it.
she corrected it. So
Yep.
she crossed off one and she corrected it then with the new place.
She said she drove up there really fast, and she jumped out and screamed at him to just lay down. Apparently Todd was screaming and trying to pull his clothes off. He was jumping and moving and wouldn't lie down no matter what she said. Then Linda told me that she tried to get close to him, but she didn't want to get too close because she didn't want to get burned. She was afraid to touch him. And then she jumped back in the van.
Now
Once she
what did she do then when she jumped back in?
When she jumped back in the van, she couldn't get it to go backwards, so she slammed it into gear and went forward to position 4.
Okay, I'm going to mark position 4, which is here.
Yes.
And what is that dotted line then by number 4?
She said there was a fence line there, and she almost ran through the fence. And then she still couldn't back up, so she decided to go down and behind the house, so further downhill, to try and get traction. And 6 is where she ended up stopping, is what she
So you
said.
said number 6. So
That
back
is now
here.
behind the house. Correct.
Okay.
Obviously, I asked her more questions about why is she heading further away, and she told me that even though it was further downhill, that they would sometimes go down there because it was sandier down behind the house, and you could get better traction, so she figured she'd go down there and drive up. but
What do you mean drive up?
drive back up to go out the driveway to apparently go get help. But then she said that she left the van there and she got out of it. She never described to me that she then actually drove back up the hill from being back there. When she got to where position 6 is,
Which is again where?
behind the house,
Behind the house?
Yeah.
Okay. When she gets to position 6, what does she say she does?
she said that she saw Todd. He was not on fire. He didn't have any clothes on at that point. He was badly burned, and she actually used the phrase that he was like pink melt.
Pink melt?
Pink melt.
Did she say she approached Todd?
She did. She also said that when he was in the state, that she laid on top of him at that point because I guess the neighbors, Connie and Mike, had seen the smoke and were coming up the driveway. She laid on top of him because he didn't have any clothes on. And then she also said she didn't want him to not be able to breathe. And then she also explained it was because she didn't want him to go into shock or freeze. She said she could feel his heart beating. She could tell that he was breathing, but it was hard for him. She said she put her mouth on his mouth a few times and just tried to give him little breaths. And she could see in that position that Todd's skin was melted.
And then did you ask her at any time if she remembered hitting Todd or how Todd got run over by the van?
Yes, she said she has no memory of that. She said that she had heard about that accusation prior to me talking to her. She has no idea. She told Kate she had no idea how the blood got on the van, and she told Len McHugh that she didn't know if she ran over Todd or if it was just a rumor about her running over Todd. But in all of these drawings and configurations, she never acknowledged or described an event where she hit her husband with a van.
I have no further questions for this witness, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Willison, counsel, your whole purpose for the examination under oath is based on a contractual relationship that you had with an insurance company. Isn't that correct?
I did not have a contractual relationship with the insurance company other than being retained as.
Well, I mean, you were retained by either the insurance company
Yes.
or an agent of the insurance
The
company,
insurance
right?
company. Yes.
And when do you know when you were retained by the insurance company in reference to this case?
I don't have that at my fingertips, but if I recall, it would have been a couple of weeks before this first examination under oath.
Before the first examination?
Before the first one, yes. So my guess would be late January, early February.
Okay. And were you advised at the time that you was retained that the insurance status as it relates to the property of Mr. and Mrs. Stermer, that whether or not they had insurance at the time of the fire?
Yes, I was told that they were behind on payments, that they had received, I believe, their second notice that it was going to be canceled, but on the day of the fire, the policy was still in legal effect.
Are you sure that the policy was in effect on the date of the fire, or was the policy not paid on the date of the fire, and there was information provided that showed that the policy, the insurance, was paid at a later date after the fire?
Now that you mention that, I do recall that it was a situation where if she came in and made payment they would reinstate it without lapse, which meant that there would be coverage for the day of the fire. My concern was there a policy in place that would cover the events of January 7? And the answer to that was yes. But I believe you're right that happened because she made a payment after the fire where the insurance company reinstated without lapse.
In reference to your being retained, you have a certain amount of information that you are capable of obtaining in reference to verify and corroborate information. Isn't that correct?
Yes. So as the attorney, I like quarterback a number of resources,
Yeah.
investigators, things like that.
And the insurance company provides you a portfolio of the property and the insured, don't they?
I don't know what you mean by portfolio.
Well, you are provided with information in reference to the house,
I would get claim documents. So I
claim
would get-
documents.
Right.
Yes.
So the policy of insurance, any recorded statements that were taken, early on, there's not going to be any expert reports, but I would eventually get expert reports that would have photographs and things. I'd get adjuster photographs. Sometimes, or eventually, I would get underwriting information, like when we first wrote the policy, did we have a floor plan? Did we have photographs? So I'd get things like that.
Yeah. So you had all that information in reference to this case, right?
I don't know if I had that when I first was retained, but eventually I got all that, yes.
Were you able to determine that in reference to the insurance documents that the policy was in either Mr. Stermer's name or was it in Ms. Stermer's name? Or was it in both their names?
I would have to look at the policy to be certain of that. What I know is that because they were married and living together at the time, that even if it was in Todd Stermer's name only, she would be what's considered a named insured.
Yes.
But she would also be considered a named insured if her name was on the policy. So because there wasn't a distinction for me, I don't recall.
Do you have the policy here with you today?
I don't. I might be able to pull it up on my computer, but
Could you check and see?
sure. First, I gotta get connected to the internet. It is not getting very good service, so I'm not able to pull up the policy. Sure, that'd be fun. Yeah. Okay. Now apparently I am logged on. I have several documents in here. I'm scrolling through. The policy of insurance.
Beg your pardon?
What was your last question of him?
The policy on the property.
Okay.
The amount.
The amount.
Policy in the name. Policy.
That was the wrong,
Thank you.
that was an auto policy I just pulled up, so let me see if I get a different. I don't have the policy in front of me, but I have a document that would be taken off the policy. It says that the insured is Linda Todd and Linda Stermer.
Okay, and what was the policy amount?
Well, I have a reserve amount, but I guess I'm going to have to find the actual policy, so please hold. A number of the file documents were not retained due to the age of the file, but I believe it. Again, I'm not finding the actual policy of insurance, but I do see a document that seems to indicate if you added all the coverages up, it'd be $504,675.
But those are not coverages just for the cost of, in reference to the policy that was covering for fire loss, so was it?
The dwelling, the contents, and something called loss of use.
Yes. And you say the total was $500,000?
504, yes.
Now, in your In your retainer agreement, part of what you are also provided is information in reference to the payment history of the individual insured. Isn't that correct?
Almost never. If I request it, if it becomes an issue, then I will get that. But
How did you know that Ms. Stermer did not know that there was insurance coverage on the property because it had not been paid?
how did I know that she did not know?
Did Ms. Stermer tell you that she didn't know that they had insurance because Mr. Stermer had failed to make the premiums payments?
I believe she did tell me that she wasn't aware that they had insurance, yes.
And you were able to verify that because she testified that you was provided information that the policy was not paid, but she was told to come in and make the payment on the policy,
I was
right?
provided that information, yes.
Yeah. And do you know how many months the policy had not been paid prior to the fire?
I do not know.
You don't know?
No.
Did you ever obtain that information from anyone with the insurance company?
I don't know if I did. The only thing I cared about is whether or not the insurance company was going to say there was a policy in place for that date. And they said there was, so that's all I cared about.
Do you know the name of the insurance agent that contacted you, the representative from the insurance company that contacted you?
Well, it wouldn't have been the agent. It goes to the insurance company. They
Yes.
have, in this particular case, it was a gentleman named Rodney Thuma.
Rodney Thuma.
Yes.
Okay. And did you have conversations with Mr. Thuma back and forth as you conducted the depositions with Ms. Stermer?
You mean the examinations under oath?
Well, yes, if you call that.
Yes. Well, there's a difference. And yes, I certainly would have spoke to him, sure.
Okay. Did Mr. Thuma provide you information that you needed to inquire of Ms. Stermer in reference to the fire?
Well, everything I got from the insurance company came through Mr. Thuma. So, yes, I suppose he provided me information, yes.
Did Mr. Thuma provide you information in reference to some of the issues as it relates to the cause of the fire?
I guess I'm gonna object on, you're saying we're asking now then what Mr. Thuma told him about the cause of the fire. I think we're gonna do some hearsay issues here. If he wants to talk in generalities, that's fine, but we're gonna talk specifics, it's hearsay.
But it's not hearsay if I talk in generality? I mean, I'm trying to judge.
What are you
and-
offering
and-
it for? What are you offering the testimony for?
No, it's being offered to confirm the questions that he had to use to rely upon when he was examining my client under oath.
Okay, and so I'm finding it's not for the truth of the matter asserted, so I'll allow you to ask the question.
Yes.
I'm really not sure where we're going with it. No one gives me questions for anything, but I was told that they believed it was an intentionally set fire. Is that what you're asking?
And what did they tell you it was believed on?
What was it believed on?
Yeah, I mean, you were told that they who believed it was an intentional fire.
Your Honor, I think we're getting a little beyond the intent of why these statements are being offered. If he wants to ask if he received Scott Leroy's reports, I would be okay with that, but when we're starting to ask the questions this way, I feel like we're getting into a different area.
Your Honor, I believe, may we approach? Yes. Yes, you can answer, sir.
Okay. Based on the findings of both the state police and one of the best private fire investigators in the state, they both had the same opinion that this was an intentionally set fire preliminarily. And so I went forward on that, and then I would find out their final conclusions later on.
Yeah. And so basically, when you set Ms. Stermer for an examination under oath, and she agrees to be set for examination under oath,
Yes?
you're in essence, your whole mission is to interrogate, to be able to validate what you had been provided from who you said was one of the best state fire investigators in the state. And that basically is what you was trying to do, right?
Well, I wouldn't expect the insured to be able to validate forensic analysis, but the information about where the fire was, statements she made, her side of the story, like I said earlier, all of that would certainly be part of it, yes. But as far as understanding fire patterns and knowing what is important and what isn't important, I wouldn't expect a layperson to know that. That's what experts are for.
But in your examination,
Yes?
you're looking for misstatements and inconsistent statements. Would that be fair to say?
I'm asking to get details of the story, and I am aware when misstatements are made, and I dig into that more. Yes, absolutely. But that's not the purpose. I'm not trying to give misstatements. I would hope and assume that once I put someone under oath, they're going to tell me all the truth, but they don't always. And when they don't, then I make note of that and I dig deeper into those issues.
So my next question is, how do you determine what the truth is and what is not the truth?
Well, me personally, I will take all of the information I gather. I try to not make that decision at all while I'm in the statement. I gather all the information and I compare what I was told with what I can verify from outside sources, from what common sense says, what makes logical sense, whether the story from this person has changed or stayed the same. And then I put it all together and say, I think that they are making misrepresentations, or I think they're telling the truth.
And so you do take this examination under oath and the answers you obtained from my client, and then you took those questions and answers and you compared it to information that was provided to you from the investigators, the state investigator, and you compared it to information that was provided to you from one of the experts, right?
Yes.
And then you made a conclusion and told the insurance company that, in your opinion, Ms. Stermer had not given you truthful answers. Would that be true?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Now, when you asked Ms. Stermer about the marital relationship,
Yes.
were you able to corroborate the information she provided to you in reference to how long they had been married and in reference to the family nucleus as far as the children, her husband, his employment, her employment, and what their financial status was?
Well, that's a big question.
It was all part of your...
But there's like 8 issues in that question.
Okay, well,
but yes, I was able to verify that they were married. I was able to verify that, I came to the conclusion that this was a tumultuous relationship that was in the process of ending. I came to the conclusion that they were financially strapped, although I did not necessarily conclude that that was a new condition, right? Because that's one of the things I look for, is a change in financial circumstances. When you just live a certain lifestyle, you become used to it. That doesn't create pressure. It's when the change to your lifestyle happens, that's what can create pressure. And I didn't see a big change in their financial situation. And I'm trying to think of what the other topics were that
What did you base the change in their financial status? What did you base that on? Did you able to go outside of the conversation with Ms. Stermer?
We asked for bank statements from Ms. Stermer. We looked at those kinds of things.
Okay, just let me stop right there.
Sure.
You got Ms. Stermer's bank statements?
Yes.
Okay. And the bank statements, was there anything unusual about Ms. Stermer's bank statements?
I don't know what you mean by unusual.
Well, I mean, did it show that she made deposits in reference to her employment?
As I recall, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Did you verify how long she had been employed?
I don't think I bothered with that, no.
Did you check on various places where she had worked?
No.
Okay. Did you check on various places where Mr. Stermer had worked?
No. Well, Mr. Stermer? No.
Yes, yes.
No.
Did you do any type of financial background on Mr. Stermer?
Not much, because as I put the information together in this, my conclusion was that this was not a financially motivated fire, and so digging into the finances wasn't necessary. There was a different motive for this fire.
So in other words, what you stated in reference to finances, there was nothing unusual that gave you any red flags that an individual would have burned down their house because of their financial status, right?
Yeah, he's asking him to speculate at this
Well,
point.
Well, no, like I said, one of the things I look at when I'm determining whether or not there's a financial motive for a fire is, was there a change, a sudden, like a loss of a job, a bankruptcy, a change in a health condition, or a promotion, a new job, something positive. I didn't see a dramatic change, positive or negative, in their financials.
But you would have had to go outside of the examination under oath with Ms. Stermer in order to verify those facts, though, right?
Correct. What I found outside was consistent with what she told me about finances. Okay. Yes.
And part of your examination under oath also in reference to these type of cases is that you also have to try to verify whether or not the individual has made any prior claims in reference to losses, right?
Sure, that's a relevant data point, yes.
This time, and please remember your rules. We'll make it about a 15-minute break.
Mr. Willison, I believe right before the break I was had asked if there were any other claims that you had verified or tried to inquire of Mr. or Mrs. Stermer in reference to fire claims.
She told me that they had a claim together before they were married, but I think after around the time they had their first child together, that they had a fire claim on a place they lived, that the claim was paid, but then later she mentioned that they had to go to court to get paid.
Okay. Was that a claim in reference to the fire a house that they were living in?
At the time, yes.
Okay. Okay. And you didn't find that to be suspicious of anything as related to the claim that was being made in reference to this fire, though, right?
I certainly would have if I thought this was financially motivated, but because I didn't think this one was, then that became less relevant.
Okay. And you stated that there was some issues of domestic violence.
That's what she told me.
Okay. She told you that?
Yes.
She used the word domestic violence?
No, that's a
Okay,
term of
and that's what I want to make sure of.
Yeah.
Ms. Stermer never told you that she was living in a marriage of domestic violence.
She told me that the husband she lived with struck her. That's the definition of domestic violence.
But you can't verify that there was any domestic violence based upon your position and your job for the insurance company. You didn't verify that there was any domestic violence in the home of Mr. and Mrs. Stermer. Is that correct?
Right. Based on the information I had, I thought there was not.
Thank you. And there's nothing unusual about a husband and wife having a disagreement in reference to marital affairs and not wanting their children to be privy to a conversation about that.
Right, I guess I was gonna object. Is he asking for his opinion on that? What is he asking? Is it speculation? I'm not sure.
Well,
Your response?
because I'm going to ask another question.
Let me approach our approach.
I'm going to go out of order just a little bit, Mr. Willison.
Sure.
You've made a final report in reference to this case, didn't you?
I sent a letter to my client giving them my opinions on the case, yes.
Do you have that letter?
That'd be attorney-client privilege, sir.
So you don't write a report, you just write a letter?
Yes.
And in the letter, did you state that there was domestic violence?
You're asking me to tell you what legal advice I gave my client? I can't do that. You know that.
Well,
Yeah, I'm
I'm asking you.
on the answers to this question. I'm going to object at this point, Your Honor.
If you want to ask me what I concluded about this particular case, I can tell you that.
What did
but I
you
can't
conclude?
tell you what I told my client.
What did you conclude? That would be in your letter, right?
I'm not going to tell you what was in my letter.
Okay, well, what was your conclusion? Did you put your conclusion in something of a report?
I'm not going to tell you what was in my correspondence to my client, but I can
I
tell
don't,
you
I don't
what my
want your
conclusion was. If
I
you'd
don't
like.
want your correspondence from your
If
client.
both of you are talking
Okay.
at the same time, now I've got an objection coming.
Conclusions infringe upon the ultimate issue that this jury is to decide. So I would object at this point.
Well, are you testifying from your conclusion?
Your Honor, I guess the court should.
Yeah, I'm gonna-
Questions asked.
I'll sustain that objection.
Let me ask you this. You stated, because there was a statement that was made that I think is a very strong statement in reference to Ms. Stermer. There was a question that you brought out on direct as related to a couple of nights before the incident or the night before the incident, in which you stated that Mr. Stermer had a desire to be with his wife, and you stated that that he tried to rape her.
Yes.
You've read your transcript.
Yes.
Do you have the transcript?
I do. Mm-hmm.
I'd like for you to refer to page 246 of the transcript. And this would be, I think, the October the 18th transcript,
I'm at 246.
246.
Yes.
And your question on line 20. You see that?
Yes.
Your question, you described some pretty heavy fighting Saturday night. Sounds like. That's your question, right?
Yes.
And the answer, I don't even recall that it was heavy fighting. That's Miss Stermer, right?
That's what she told me in October.
But
Yes.
that's her answer, right?
Yes, in February she said he was screaming.
But just let me finish this question
Okay.
first. And the next stated that I know we argued some, right?
That's what it says. Yes.
Line 24. This is your question. Didn't he try to rape me?
Yes.
That's your question, right?
Yes. Now, obviously that was,
just counsel, if you just let me do this, we'll get to the next
I'm
one
just
later.
addressing this last word, me, as probably a typo or I misspoke.
Probably a typo, but I'm just relying on
Yep, but that's what
exactly
it
what I
says.
got.
Sure.
Okay?
Yep.
And the answer, no, he didn't try to rape me. He wanted to have sex.
Yes.
He tried. I had my clothes on still.
That's what she said in October. Yes.
Did you ask that same question again in another setting?
Yes. Earlier in February, I referred to it as when he tried to rape you, and she did not object or disagree with me.
So you were asking the same questions in one setting of the examination under oath, and then months later, you have her to come back and set again for an examination under oath, and you start trying to see if you could ask questions to get her to give an inconsistent statement.
That's not true.
Okay.
I
But why
asked
would
it,
you?
if you'd
my,
like me
my
to.
question is first.
If you can just be able to answer the questions with a yes or no, please do so.
Sure. Okay.
So my question is, why would Mr. Thuma that was present, who is the insurance agent or the insurance representative, Farm Bureau, right?
Yes.
He was present at both of these depositions, right?
I believe so. Yes.
Okay. So you get the answers that you are looking for under the examination under oath in the first setting. Why did you have to go back and have another examination under oath?
Well, as I stated earlier in my testimony, we did questions about and surrounding the fire early on, and then we did a second examination under oath related to the claim and other financial information that we gathered during the course of the investigation.
But how would sex have anything to do when you're talking about just the claims or the amount of the losses? How would that have anything to do with that?
Well, I'd be happy to tell you.
Well,
I asked a premise question that said that you guys were doing some heavy fighting that night because her story was starting to morph. And she said, well, we weren't really fighting. And I said, didn't he try to rape you? That's how that came up.
Okay, so you put the words in her mouth of didn't he try to rape you? And she said no.
I took what she described and summarized
You,
it with
you
the
summarized
word.
it in your
Yes.
opinion that that's what she was saying. That
Yes.
that's what was going to happen.
Yes, the story about when he was trying to pry her legs open
Yeah.
and rip her pants
You
off.
assumed that was rape.
Yes.
Sir, you need to really focus on just answering the question and
Very well.
not speaking over the attorney.
Thank you.
Now, what did you do to verify these answers that you received from Ms. Stermer? Did you do any outside investigation with anyone else, whether it's the police department or the investigators or the state fire marshal in reference to the information that you received before you wrote your letter to your insurance agent or your
gathered-
insurance company?
I gathered information from all kinds of sources, including the stuff that the police, whether it's state fire marshal or the county sheriff's department, were willing to give. The financial information, some stuff that we got from the insured, some stuff that we gathered on our own, things that the insurance company can access. So yeah, there was a number of things I looked at. Sure.
So were you able to verify that in the beginning of this claim, the very first inception of information that the Farm Bureau received, that it was not by Ms. Stermer?
I have no idea what you mean by that.
Well, your file were you able to find that Ms. Stermer was not the person that contacted the insurance company in reference to this loss?
You mean the first contact?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I don't recall if there was some sister involved. I don't know if the sister told her to make the claim or the sister made the claim on behalf of Todd, and then Linda got drawn into it. There was something like that, but that wasn't a real big issue for me, so I didn't.
But part of your examination on the oath of the individual that you're examining is ultimately to determine whether or not this individual may have been making this claim because of some fraudulent basis.
Correct. To see whether it was a financially motivated.
And if a person was going to commit fraud on an insurance claim, wouldn't they be the person that would reach out to their insurance company and say, I have a loss?
That calls for speculation.
Well,
You can ask him how often that happens or something like that, but the way the question's phrased right now is speculation.
Typically, if you're doing it for money, then that's one of the first things you take care of.
right.
Yeah.
And Ms. Stermer did not make that call or contact anyone with Farm Bureau.
Correct. Immediately.
Thank you.
Okay.
Throughout both of these examinations under oath, you set a time for Ms. Stermer to appear at your office, is that correct?
I don't think they were at my office.
Or did they do the examination under oath? Was it at your office?
No, typically we would rent a conference room in the county where the fire occurred.
But wherever the location was, it's
Yeah,
pretty
we
much
told her where to
controlled-
go. Yes.
Controlled by you, date and time.
Yep.
And you communicated with Ms. Stermer as to when you wanted her to be there, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, through her attorney.
Through her attorney.
Yes.
Right?
Mhm.
And at each setting, Ms. Stermer appeared, is that correct? On the date and time that you all had arranged for, right?
Yes, I think there were a couple that got canceled, but yes, the two statements. I mean, she was there. Yeah. Yeah.
And throughout the duration of both of these examinations under oath, Ms. Stermer fully cooperated with every question that was asked of her. Isn't that true?
I would disagree with that.
Did she answer every question that was asked of her?
Yes, she did.
So anything else would be your opinion, right?
Sure, you can put it that way.
Thank
Yes.
you. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
I just want to clear up one thing, Your Honor. When you were talking about working with the great fire marshal or however you titled it,
Fire investigators.
fire investigator, who was that?
Jim Shinsky ran one of a nationally renowned fire school for years.
So that's who you were talking
I was
about.
talking about Mr. Shinsky. Yes.
You weren't talking about anything that the state police had done or anything in terms of that statement.
When I said one of the best fire investigators, I was referring to Mr. Shinsky. We did also get information from the state police.
Okay, but that's not who you were talking about when you made that statement.
Correct.
I have no further questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Jury, questions of this witness, anyone? Yep, I've got some hands going up. Sir, I have some questions from the jury, and jury, I did determine under the law not to ask some of the questions. In exhibit number 4, Linda's drawing, if you know, what does the van spot number 5 represent?
I believe she told me that when she got to position 5 is when she decided that she should go behind the house. So 4 was at the fence line. 5 is apparently where she decided she couldn't back up, and 6 is when she went behind the house.
Thank you. Counsel, any questions in light of the question and answer either side?
No, Your Honor.
I have no questions, Your Honor.
Okay. Jury, any other questions of him? May he be excused from his subpoena?
I'd ask you to please be excused, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir, you're all done.
Thank you, Your Honor.